When I think of Michael Jackson, I was like, he told us that he was bad, and he told us that he was a thriller and he's a smooth criminal, and he kind of like always created these huge narratives about kind of really wanting us to know that despite the philanthropy and despite this innocence that I have, that there is something else happening inside of me. There's a darker version. And I think because it's so commercial and it's so big, we don't take it that seriously. But art comes from a place.
Welcome to this week's For the Record, and I'm your host, Rob Markman. Now, sexual abuse allegations against Michael Jackson and R. Kelly have made headlines once again. At the start of the week, we had the two-part HBO documentary, Leaving Neverland, and then earlier this week, we had R. Kelly go to CBS and sit with Gayle King in an attempt, and the key word is attempt, to argue and prove his innocence. Now that both artists' legacies hang in the balance, we really want to make sense of all this. What does this mean about their music? What does this mean for survivors? And where do we go from here? And to discuss that, I have a great panel today. No stranger to the show. This is my man right here, Afropunk's new culture editor, senior culture editor.
Senior culture editor.
Myles E. Johnson,
Yes.
what's up, man?
Thank you, Rob, for having me.
Nah, man, thank you for coming. I feel like last time you were here, first of all, you weren't at Afropunk last time you were here, so this is a fairly new position for you.
Yeah.
And you've been killing it, man. I've really been enjoying the work that you've been doing over there.
Thank you so much. It means a lot for you. You're a pioneer of the culture right now. I look up to you, so that's such a good piece of validation.
We're going to cut that part out. Next up, we have Lakin Starling, music and culture writer, who just recently wrote the Esquire profile on Offset, which was really dope. We interviewed Offset here at Genius and used that as kind of research to see where he was at with his headspace. So that's amazing piece.
Thank you.
And great work that you do all around.
Thanks.
I just felt like this was such an important discussion to have. It's a really powerful week, a really kind of gut-wrenching week in music and just society and culture when you look at what's going on with Michael Jackson and R. Kelly. Myles, man, I want to start with you. Although the allegations of sexual abuse with Michael Jackson is nothing new, but Leaving Neverland, the new HBO documentary, really brought these accusations back into the spotlight. Michael Jackson's estate denies the allegations, right? But the stories are really convincing.
Yeah.
When you look at Wade Robson and James Safechuck, who are the two victims that this Leaving Neverland documentary focused on. You wrote a piece for Afropunk's website this week titled Neverland, My Childhood Fantasy and Adult Nightmare. So, I want to ask you and just get right into it. As a fan, as a journalist, and as a human being, how are you coping with this documentary and seeing it and the information that we now have?
Yeah, well, luckily, I was able to process it earlier than like the general public. So I kind of went through it and, I'm in like fight mode now because it was just really triggering. It was a lot. And it was one of those situations, because I was born in 91, is one of those weird situations where I'd never fully engaged the accusations because I wasn't really an adult and I wasn't really watching the news for stuff like that. And then once it came out again, I was whatever I was into as a teenager, which wasn't Michael Jackson. I thought Michael Jackson was corny. And then I went back and was like, oh, I can re-love this man, you know what I mean, who I kind of fell in love with in childhood. So I think the powerful thing about the documentary is, A, there is the evidence there, the small Cartier kitty rings, and then be able to describe his genitals with precision. So those things are proof. It's not just stories, but I do think the documentary offers a narrative. So it's not just evidence and you don't really know what's going on, and then he's dancing on the top of a car roof and people are saying he's not guilty. It wasn't just these random facts or these random pieces of information. They lay it out a narrative and a story and a background story and let you know this is what happened. And I think that's what really moves me, and that's what really is moving and disturbing people, both people who want to believe it or who believe it and people who are denying it. I think it's the narrative of like, oh, this is the other King of Pop that you didn't know about.
Right. Yeah. And they're getting a lot of criticism in the documentary for not really showing both sides of the story. But the filmmaker said he was really trying to tell Wade Robson's story and James Safechuck. Like, this is really about their story and not about a defense of Michael Jackson. They aim to tell these two men's story about what they've been through. And I feel like we learned a lot. Like, what was your reaction? What was your kind of feeling? What did you walk away from after seeing that?
It was a lot. Okay, so like watching it, for one, it was a different experience, obviously, from watching the R. Kelly documentary for like many reasons. One of them, me and my friends were kind of talking about this, like how like some of us have had to like not so much check ourselves, but like figure out what we needed to sort of unpack around seeing not children, but now grown up white men telling this story about Michael Jackson. Like it's something that I feel like automatically puts people at like, like they don't, it somewhat discredits for whatever reason. And I think that all kind of ties into like, the visibility that white men typically have, or the access, or the fact that people will believe them. But they were abused as children. So that was what I was just like totally stuck on when, there were moments when I believe it was Jimmy was talking about how he's a father now and he has a son who was the same age as him, like when he was 7, and he was also being, allegedly abused by Michael Jackson, and just sort of like going back and having to like remember that all victims, survivors, should be humanized, no matter what they look like, no matter what society implies about them and their experiences. So it was interesting because like, obviously Michael Jackson is no longer here. So a lot of people I think were like, well, what is the point of all this? How can we even hold him accountable? And I'm like, well, you can still hold somebody accountable even if they're no longer here. And I think that the first step in that is at least acknowledging and listening to the survivors and believing them. Because like they, like it's we can't send him to jail. We can't bring him back. But the one thing that I think that we can do is to honor the people who were harmed by him, and listen to their stories, and figure out what gets in the way of being able to fully believe this. That's just off of some conversations that I've been having. I don't know if you've had talks to people who were just kind of doubtful, and I was like, wait, y'all, even the questions of like, well, their parents, and I'm like, these are the same things people were saying about the R. Kelly thing, and you were like, no, like, okay, their parents might have been a bit negligent, but like that still does not ever justify what happened, who was the person in the wrong, and I know that it's also, I think for me, just in terms of with R. Kelly, it was different because there were young Black girls and women, and we all know that there's like there's always some doubt around
when it comes to the two Black women.
Yeah. So just trying like not to repeat that like really toxic and harmful sort of, like that was just like fighting off with that specific documentary. So
you made a good you made a point that a lot of people are making. A lot of people are saying, well, this is unfair to Michael and his legacy because he's not alive to defend himself. And if that's the stance that you take, then well, I'm not necessarily here to convince you otherwise. If you, the people who have made up their minds
Right.
and are going to stick to those guys. But R. Kelly is alive and tried to defend himself this week when sitting with Gayle King, and it's just so strange how we're in this place because it's really emotional to watch and to take in this information from two of artists that we love in our culture in the same week.
Right.
The R. Kelly Gayle King interview, the unhinged R. Kelly
clown.
Yeah.
He did what he came to do.
I just think what I'm kind of excited is not the right word, but it's the word that I have. Because sometimes you spend time writing about things and hoping cultural moments can inform what you're writing about, or it just sounds kind of like abstract and heady and weird. What I was really kind of happy about was like, this is how liars look and how manipulators look. And I think we've been having a lot of different examples of how people can look at you dead in the eye in media and to really try to convince you of something for their own selfish purposes. And I do like that it's happening on a public stage. So we saw the evidence. We can't deny that. And now we see him having a temper tantrum with Oprah's best friend Gail. like he's unhinged. He's not well.
Right.
And this is how people talk when they're not well. I got nervous watching it in some points because how he was slamming his fist. It wasn't really about what he was saying. It's how you react to conflict. That's not how adults react to conflicts. It's not how people who don't hit people react to conflicts. That's not how people who aren't looking to control women and control situations handle conflicts, you know?
Yeah.
I hope that if you disagree with me when I say R. Kelly, you won't get up and, slam your
Right.
fist, because that's not how we handle it.
And just to, we up until this point of taping this episode, I feel like Gayle King has said it was about a 90-minute discussion.
Yeah.
I feel like we've only seen about 10 or 15 minutes of that. CBS is rolling that out very slowly.
I think Fridays when it comes out.
So maybe by the time this episode airs, I just want the audience to know there may be more stuff that come out. Gayle said herself, though, and this sounds weird to say to R. Kelly's credit, Gayle said herself that the majority of the interview was calm and was not that unhingedness, though these are the images that we're seeing now, and you can't.
Yeah, and I also think that people when they're trying to manipulate you and they feel it's not working, they get more frustrated.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm sure it didn't start like that, but I think
Right.
that he felt the disbelief and then it seemed like Gayle had an amazing line of questioning that was hard to answer, and that frustration because you would have to either blatantly lie or just acknowledge that the truth is that you abuse these women.
One question that I want to ask myself too, and one question that I think is helpful, or two questions actually, that I think for everybody as because really what we're doing here is really trying to figure out where do we go from here. You know what I'm saying? As a culture, as music critics, as people in the music space, as fans, as an industry, as a society, right? And I think two questions that are very important for each individual to ask themselves and for us to ask each other is, what do I want to believe? First off, what do I want to believe? And then the second question is, what do I actually believe? Because I think those can be two very different answers. And I'll start, when it comes from Michael Jackson, growing up, in the 80s and being an 80s baby and all the way through the 90s, I got to see that. If you look over there, the Michael Jackson Thriller vinyl is on the wall For the Record over here at Genius, and it's been here every week.
Right.
I didn't want to take it down. I didn't want to be fake, and then all of a sudden, now that there's Michael Jackson controversy, take the vinyl down for this particular episode, because we're now reconciling what do we do with his musical legacy. So I say all that to say, I grew up a fan of Michael Jackson. He was the king of pop. He was the biggest artist in the world. What do I want to believe? I want to believe that it's not true. I don't know that anybody, or let me speak for myself, I don't step into it wanting Michael Jackson and this story to end up with Michael Jackson as the villain. What do I actually believe? After seeing that documentary, I believe that, that there's some accounts of having the victims once come to defense. There's like inaccuracies and stuff like that. But when you watch it, it's something happened.
Yeah.
Something heinous happening, something bad happened. The details as to every little detail being true, or I don't know yet, and I haven't decided, and that, maybe we'll never know. But in watching that, it's like something happened and something not right happened. At the very least, a grown man sharing his bed with children, like.
Yeah, something definitely happened.
Something happened that we have to really look at.
And I always try to remove. To me, what makes it simpler is if you remove the celebrity component.
Yeah.
Because anytime something happens with a celebrity, it gets like normalized, because who knows how you would behave if you were that famous and that rich.
Right.
So my whole thing is, if I live in Crown Heights, if there was a dude who used to be my complexion and now is your complexion with a wig on, and he has no wife, no children of his own for a long time. He has children now, or he had his children now. But and he just had these children in his home,
Yeah.
you would be like, yo, what's going on this block? That's
Right.
it would just be weird. Why is it not weird with Michael Jackson? If he had maybe it's a trampoline and a bouncer, but if he was doing all those things in your neighborhood, it would be weird. You would call somebody. So like Michael Jackson gets the same thing. And I think as far
Yeah.
as like his legacy goes, I think that because his music was so mesmerizing and his film and his visual films were so mesmerizing too, and they kind of distracted us for so long, I think that his legacy actually did really good. I think that I think that if for 20 years of my life, right, so 25 years of my life, that I thought that he was the king and magical, and now if his legacy is affected by a lot of people and they don't think that way, that's kind of even because of how heinous the things that you did were. You're kind of lucky that you missed out on this moment. You know what I mean?
And I just want to shout out Craig Jenkins over at Vulture, friend of the show, great writer, had wrote a piece to that point that maybe through our stargazing that we let Michael Jackson and other stars become too powerful to the point where we're blinded by things that are right in our face that we conveniently don't deal with because we're entertained.
For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, even for both artists, just speaking about Michael Jackson, the parents in the documentary even said, we had gotten caught up in the whole, whimsical world of Michael Jackson and he wants to be friends with our kid. And we're also, getting the perks of this lifestyle. And they were totally like, so just like blind to it all. And then I think like with R. Kelly, it's interesting, like the one thing that's interesting that I wanted to tie this back to what we were just talking about with the interview with Gayle and from the documentary on Lifetime where the filmmakers were basically saying how, he's had this way of gradually being so overtly like, hey y'all, this is what I'm about, this is what I'm doing. In all of his music, in all of his art, in all of his imaging. And we just I don't even think that people didn't know. I think it's just like because if we could totally forget the first trial that he had, you know what I mean? It's like, it's just totally out of sight, out of mind. We're like quick forgivers.
Yeah.
And I think that kind of goes back to the fact that he was able to sort of like build and construct that type of facade to kind of make you be like, oh, no. Like you put it so much in someone's
like
face
him
that,
calling himself the Pied Piper, which has connotations.
Right.
I think just going back, because I remember the reaction, because one thing, man, after we see these documentaries, the music hits a little different, right?
Right.
Like you hear, feels like you're ready.
It's all bad.
And you're like, wait, hold on.
I mean,
I always thought this song was about this, but now is it about
It's all
this?
bad. And then like, before I forget, because I just want to try to explain it. No, it's cool. Like the whole, this idea of putting something so far in your face to where most times you just either accept it for what it is or you start to question like, well, why would he do that? So that's how he did with Gayle. Why would I? It doesn't make any sense. It's almost like, it's like he's gaslighting and then he's telling you, oh, why would I do these things? Doesn't make sense. I'm trying to be with my kids. You're putting it in our faces so much again. On the other flip side of it though, now you're crying, you're putting that into our faces. And so it's kind of forcing people to have a little bit of empathy. That could be like, and that's just like a harmful tactic. Like thankfully Gayle was there and I think that we have enough information to be able to say you're lying. But to me, like that's so scary because it's like, can only imagine how he is off camera with these young women and girls that he's with.
And I just wanted to say to you, like, that was beautifully said about R. Kelly.
Yeah.
And I was saying it in jest with a couple of friends, but like, when you really think about it, I think all artists are just compelled to tell their truth. And I think, even when I think of Michael Jackson, I was like, he told us that he was bad, and he told us that he was a thriller and he's a smooth criminal, and he kind of like always created these huge narratives about kind of really wanting us to know that despite the philanthropy and despite this innocence that I have, that there is something else happening inside of me. There's a darker version. And I think because it's so commercial and so big, we don't take it that seriously. But art comes from a place. Even blockbusters like Thriller come from a place. There's a reason you feel, sometimes there's a reason you feel compelled to show yourself as somebody to feel safe with, and then show yourself as a monster, and then show yourself as a date who's actually a monster. That's compelling.
It's fun. It's funny that you that you mentioned that, and just goes back to, man, that music is different. You know, a lot of that song he had co-writers. I wonder, like, you know, I don't know, and I hear what you're saying, and you give literally right now giving me something to think about, and I'm like, was Smooth Criminal just a song, or was it like this covert confession, right? But what I will say, and I think that's where we are now, is like we're grappling with, wait, hold on, and re-examining. I know for a fact we were doing some research on something here at Genius, and it wasn't even Michael Jackson related, and we were just playing music, and someone in the meeting had played, PYT came on, Pretty Young Thing. One of my favorite Michael Jackson songs of all time. When I heard it yesterday, it hit different. I said, oh shit. Like, it don't hold up. You know what I'm saying?
Even his cathartic songs, the song that personally that I love about Michael Jackson was like Human Nature, and I can't help it. And then I wonder, like, what is he trying to relax himself about? What is he trying to find catharsis in? It paints your whole, and just me kind of loving art history and Black history and loving in literary history in a way where I'm maybe studying Hawthorne from like a removed place. It's like, yeah, everybody knows that Edgar Allan Poe created amazing ghost stories because he was hella demented and he was hella disturbed. So like, I don't know why when we have the conversation about pop music and maybe on a mainstream scale that we think that doesn't happen. It has to come from somewhere.
Okay, so this begs the question, and this is exactly what I kind of want to tackle and or at least start to scratch the surface on. Where do we go from here, right? Can we separate the art from the artist? And you know, we've been asking ourselves that with R. Kelly through this thing, and I think we've seen with R. Kelly, you know, look, Mute R. Kelly, was going on with his record label, what's been going on with Spotify, is very easy, or not easy, but there's this process of actually canceling R. Kelly's music and not separating the artist from the art. You know, Michael Jackson is someone who I feel is much more ingrained into just our consciousness as society, and not just Black music, but music across the world. Can we separate Michael Jackson, the man and the artist, from the actual art that he created? Can we still enjoy these songs the same way?
No. I say no, and I say no because, I mean, yes, if you turned on an R. Kelly song, I'm sure all the aunties would still slightly enjoy it. But in terms of...
and raise money to bail them out.
Right. But in terms of, you know, enjoying it culturally, no, I think that even to what you just brought up about Mute R. Kelly, like, if you look at a hashtag like that becomes a movement, look at how much it's like totally dismantled what he had thought that he, you know, was just a few months ago. He's on Facebook Live and like, oh, they can't stop me. But literally not supporting and like not enabling artists by supporting their art, like that is one of the most powerful things I think that people can do. And I'm not saying go out and like, you don't have to necessarily start a crusade if that's not your, you know what I mean, your methods, but not listening to their music or not actively playing it, I think it's the least that we can do for, you know what I mean, for the ones who are not involved in documenting, not involved in, you know, the documentary and the cases in court. Like, I think that if they can single-handedly, this man doesn't have $100,000, which is not that much money, just from his record label dropping him, just from streaming not happening anymore, just from not being able to book shows, that kills a lot of the monster that we were dealing with, because a lot of his power and control was totally, a lot of it which is based on his celebrity, and within that comes power. So I think that, I mean, if you are just an artist and your art is all you have, then we should definitely, like, you know, I think that, and your art is something that you're sharing with the public, It's not your 9-to-5 job. We also have the agency and authority as people who consume the art to be able to take a stand about not listening to it anymore, I think.
I know you grew up a huge Michael Jackson. I read your piece and the music. Like, can you just say, you know, like imagine you're just somewhere and a playlist comes on and I Want to Rock With You come on,
right?
And there's probably that innate feeling just because the beat and it feels good. Like, oh, this is my shit. Oh, wait,
like,
no, it's
nah.
not my shit anymore.
Yeah.
So that to me, that's like justice, right? Because that discomfort that, and I can like go on and like muse about like how hurt I feel, but that discomfort, I'm sure you had beef with somebody before and they really did you dirty. And then
Me?
and I'm just saying,
I'm the nicest guy.
and then you look at them and they're in the party and you're like, this clown, he's all charming and stuff like that. Think about if your abuser is Michael Jackson.
Right.
And think about the amount of just torture that you're going through, that this person is simultaneously maybe like harming you and causing you depression and causing you anxiety and has traumatized you and kind of ruined your childhood, as the world is praising him and exalting him, specifically post death, because he went through Wacko Jacko and kind of got reformed after death. But I do think it's a two-part answer. I think that when it comes to R. Kelly, I think R. Kelly's alive, and I think the need to affect him economically is imperative for his survivors to make sure that he can't abuse anybody else. When it comes to Michael Jackson, that's why I love Karen Mayo's piece on the Afropunk too. She talks about going and looking at the memorabilia that she collected and listening to it one more time and kind of knowing intellectually as an adult that she kind of has to separate morally and as a Black feminist, but she just needed that one more time. And I think that I'm not really interested in controlling what people do in their private space, because I think that's such an individual decision. And specifically with a figure like Michael Jackson, I understand that it might be emotionally complicated. Black people don't really, our musicians a lot of times are a civil rights hero. People forget that went to Motown and he was the forefront of like this MTV movement. MTV did not play Black artists
at all.
Thriller and Purple Rain were the reason why they were so extravagant and so big was because this is what it takes for MTV to recognize us. You can't ignore Thriller. So I get it, but I do think that the conversation is about what do we accept in public space. So you might be having your complicated reaction to it. You might be having your complicated reaction to it. I'm having my complicated reaction to it. These are all three different reactions when we get home, but how about we agree in public space that we're not going to play him, because what if this triggers a survivor? What if we agree that we're not going to have his image up because this might trigger a survivor? How about in public showing community solidarity and as individuals kind of deciding it on our own, but just agreeing on a certain type of public decency?
You know, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I feel like I understand what you're saying, because like I'm sure like you, I've been having these conversations for weeks with friends trying to just sort through what's the complicated parts of it. For me, for me, I feel like yes in public, yes in private. Of course, can't control what anybody does, right? Like, but it's literally like the most overplayed and cliche term, keep that same energy. Like, that's just how I feel about it. I just feel like it should not be this hard. Like, I know that it's hard because we love their music, but it just should not be this hard to just be like, I'm not.
But what do you do to, and this is not a damnation on Kanye West, Good Life, great song.
Kanye.
Samples, Kanye, maybe a bad example of what Kanye is.
Kanye.
That's easy.
But no, but even listen, and I'm gonna tell you this, I don't agree with
I think
cancel Kanye. It's different. I could be like, yo, I don't agree with you.
Yeah,
wearing the Magna hat.
nuance.
I'm not gonna. Kanye may be a bad example. LL Cool J, because we'll be here for a whole another hour. We go LL Cool J, Hey Lover with Boys to Men. Amazing song. I love that song, right? Really kind of like a dope song, a big hit for my generation at least. Samples Michael Jackson's A Lady in My Life. You see what I'm saying? When you really start to look at how much is really intertwined into our DNA.
Right. And for examples like that, like me and my sister were listening to Black 808, and she was like, damn, R. Kelly like wrote this. Like I was like, I didn't even realize he wrote this. And that's like one of our favorite songs.
You're like,
but I'm like, so when they were talking about that, and I was like, well, I'm like, I still, will want to like support and celebrate Black. Like, it's I can't I don't know. I don't even know what year. I can't remember what year it came out. I think it was before the case, his first trial. But yeah, like that's the thing about canceling. It's definitely more nuanced than just like no. But there do have to be very strong lines and boundaries of what is just not acceptable. And I think that that's murky in our society because there's always this level of like, well, and it's like to me it needs to be a bit more concrete about just like let's just get on the same page about what we just do not accept and what is not okay.
One question that I kind of want to
In regards to abusers.
Right.
Specifically regards to abusers.
One thing that I kind of want to get final thoughts on, and again, the purpose of this episode, I think, was to have a real discussion and hopefully for the audience watching and the people in the comments, I'm not even trying to create a back and forth like Michael Jackson's innocent and he's being portrayed a certain way or he's guilty. Idealistically, because I'm an idealist, is I would love for people to just talk about honestly how they feel. I think that's the first step, is everybody talk about honestly how they feel. One very personal thing about me and my kids, I have 2 children, I have 2 sons, and I play them older music, older than, my youngest, his favorite rapper right now is Drake, and, he'll flip-flop between Drake and Kendrick, probably depending on who has a new project out. But he knows Biggie. Like if a Biggie song comes on, he knows Biggie's voice. He knows Pac's voice. He knows Prince, and they know Michael Jackson. I play them Michael Jackson music, and we'll take long road trips, and I'll tell them how great Michael Jackson was, and that points to legacy, right? And as I'm watching the documentary at home, my kids are coming in and out the room, but now I have to have this discussion about, and I'm sure they're hearing what's going on.
Right.
But as much as I tell them how great Michael Jackson was, now me and my sons are gonna have to have this conversation about really what's coming out and how do you deal with it. So it points to legacy. So, I say, how do we feel like their legacies will go from here with R. Kelly and Mike in particular?
Well, did you have a
Yeah, I mean, legacies. Well, okay, you can't take away a person's legacy in what they've done previously. I think they did a really good job of talking about that in the R. Kelly documentary on Lifetime, just in terms of like, yes, all these great musical things that you have done are true. You did them, you're good at doing them, they were successful. But your legacy as a musician is not wholly your legacy as a human being. And so I think that like within your musical legacy, there is another side to it. And so yes, if you want to hold on to those old records and say, oh, he was the best songwriter ever, and fine. But I mean, legacies often change. And I think that now I don't think there's really any value right now, I can't see, in focusing on any of that stuff, because that stuff is like, that's the most obvious, that's the easiest go-to, it's the most visible wherever you are, it's easily accessible, it's in your face. So I think that like we need to be vigilant about having some input into this new legacy that is coming up, which is one that is totally marred by the realities of his abuse, R. Kelly, towards girls and women. And for Michael Jackson, I think it's a bit more, it feels a bit more like, it feels bigger. It just feels...
he was bigger and more talented.
Yeah, it just in terms of like talent, like of course, but just in terms of the vastness of his legacy, like you were saying, even going back to, things that he sort of broke through in the industry, and like, in terms of just like the way that his legacy has been able to like totally transpire. I just feel like with Michael Jackson, because he's not here and because he doesn't have the, agency to be here and say, hey, I did or did not do this, I don't know, it's really hard. I mean, I also don't feel like, I don't really know the right answer, but I also don't feel comfortable saying his legacy still stands.
Right. And it's okay. And again, I think also marking the moment of time that we are is really taking in information, is really kind of hitting home. And I think it's okay to say I'm still figuring it out. And I don't know, but Myles might have a different take.
And I think that because of Me Too and because I think that social media makes things move way faster and feel more intense. And because of the Me Too, it just feels like a lot of things are happening at one time very quickly for a lot of people. But I do think that this false legacy panic that we're having, that as somebody who studies men and the history of men and the history of kind of like patriarchy, I was like, men's legacies tend to be fine.
Yeah.
Like I was thinking about even this.
Even
I
OJ.
put in Rick James the other day, and then I randomly was thinking, I was like, why am I listening to Rick James and I'm mad about Michael? And I forgot that Rick James went to jail for torturing, like, and sexually torturing a woman. I'm like, but what I know for sure is Andy Warhol, Rick James, there's just so many countless men who have done heinous things, and then you give it time. So our generation, these generations are able to view what's happening. I think we're always gonna have a certain narrative with Michael because he betrayed us. We loved him, and now this moment's happening, and now we hate him. But there's gonna be a generation that doesn't know that. Doesn't really remember Wacko Jacko, doesn't really remember this moment, and his legacy is going to be informed by stuff, just how we talk about presidents and how we are able to hold that you founded this country and you also enable African slavery, and we're able to hold both of those things. I think that's what's going to end up happening when it comes to men, and I think this panic right now about legacy is really. I think that it's a little bit dramatic, and I think that also it kind of takes away the focus, which the focus should be on people who are being sexually abused and people who are survivors of sexual abuse, and how in this moment, even though Michael Jackson's dead, this is such a great moment to show people who have survived pedophilia, who survived sexual abuse, that hey, no matter who the person is, you should always feel safe with coming out, and you should always feel safe with telling your truth, no matter how much proof you do or do not have. That's what this moment's about. It's really not about Michael Jackson's legacy, because I promise you, in 100 years, if this earth is still spinning, he'll be fine. Because that's just how the patriarchy's set up. They don't fret about their legacy, because even me as a black feminist, I was listening, and I kind of pride myself on trying to do the right thing. I'm over here grooving at Mary Jane, and I'm like, I just forgot. I just really just forgot. And the culture helped me forget, and that's just how we move on around. That's how we kind of move around, man.
I didn't even realize that about Rick James.
Oh yes, if you ever want an artist ruined for you.
I know he had that song. She was only 17, but she was sexy, and that was always weird to me.
But he was he was really terrible.
Remember, he went to jail. Him and Tina, I believe. They went to jail for torturing and sexually. It's nasty.
I gotta look that. I hadn't realized.
You might not. It's been a hard week.
It's been a hard week. Maybe next week. But
sorry.
Okay, no, you had a point.
I was just gonna say really quick. That's what you said is really important, and I think that that's something that people need to continue to focus on when we're talking about these idols or whatever, these huge artists. It's like, it's about them, but it's not about the legacy. It's not about the music. It's fully about the person and what they, and like what they actually did, and but more so about the survivors, and like they are the ones whose voices should be like amplified. To me,
that's justice of being able to be hidden for so long because of somebody's fame, and then being able to manipulate somebody's fame in order to tell your own truth and get justice. To me, that is justice. That is how it should happen. You spend all this fame and money to hide me, to make it so that I look crazy on television. Well, now I'm using that same fame, that same name to get attention to not only me, but other people going through it. And it's our responsibility as the public, and specifically people in our
and the legacy position. Moving forward. Like, you know, like the legacy moving forward is inclusive, should be more inclusive of those people.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree. That's a fantastic point, and moving forward and for the record, we have had Michael Jackson Thriller on display because I do believe it's an amazing piece of art. Next week you won't see that record.
Let's replace it with somebody.
Yeah, we can find. Okay, I'm gonna consult you. You gonna and we gonna figure it out.
I got some new artists who I think should replace that.
All right, we got it. We're gonna make an effort, and we're gonna switch that out. But Myles, like, I thank you so much for coming. Thank you for having this discussion, this important discussion, this very raw and honest discussion. And you know, we hope to continue the discussion with the rest of you guys out there. So. You know, I'm in the comments every week, so definitely leave comments. I'll talk back and, you know, just be open and honest, man. So next week, there's For the Record.